We are committed to creating a safe and supportive space for our guests and listeners, and to provide information and tools that will help our listeners understand, manage, and overcome trauma. We understand that the healing journey can bring up challenging emotions. Therefore, we want to warn our audience that certain episodes may contain discussions or stories that could be triggering for some individuals. The content of the podcast is for educational and informative purposes only, and we encourage you to practice self-care and discretion while listening, and to reach out to a trusted support system or professional if you feel overwhelmed and need help on your healing journey. Thanks, Jim, for being here today. I really appreciate it. This is going to be a really interesting conversation. And, it was interesting when we met and we talked about this because I was nervous because it just seemed like it was I'm not going to be able to get it. But you did such a great job explaining the whole thing, and we'll get into that. But explaining, actually, I guess I should say the septemics. So I'm saying that right, septemics. Yes.
Yes.
So, and you were just saying, so you, until about 2 years ago, were a human development engineer, which I find that a fascinating title. And then you wrote a book, Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. And once you wrote that book, things took off. And this is what you've been really focusing on, is your book and explaining the whole, what's the right word for it? The whole program? It's not really a program. What would you call it?
It's a philosophical science.
There you go.
Which greatly aids in the understanding of people.
That's it. That's a good way to put it. Okay. So tell us about this, and let's get into it and see what we can get into, because it's really interesting.
Okay. Well, I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I constructed a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics and published it in the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. The book has been out about 3 years, and 27 years, actually at this point, 28 years of direct observation have shown that this book would dramatically improve the life of anyone who takes advantage of it. Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to human beings occur in a sequence of 7 levels.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7.
I have that written down. I remember that. That really stuck out to me, and I wrote it down, and I have it here because it helped me understand this better.
Right. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences based on natural law, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique. And together, they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, situation, dilemma, conundrum that any person has can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these scales, usually more than one.
Yeah, because it could be a couple of scales at a time, can't it? Or is it just one at a time?
Well, you use the scales individually because they're unique, but you will find that in most human dilemmas or problems that multiple scales will be of use to you.
That makes sense.
That is the rule rather than the exception.
That makes sense because everything is so complex. So yeah, I get that.
So there are 24 scales which apply primarily to individuals and 11 which apply primarily to groups. And if you permit me, I will tell you the names of those scales, and then you'll know exactly what subject matter is covered in this part. Okay, so these are the individual scales. The scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales: the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales by itself can dramatically improve the life of the reader. This is very personal and very individual. Every person is unique. Every situation is unique. And you use this data for the specific individual to resolve the specific situation.
Can you give us an example so we can kind of follow along with that?
Sure.
I'm a good example person. That helps me.
Okay. Before I do that, let me tell you in general how
Okay.
this is beneficial to people. I wrote this book to help people. I've had a lifetime of helping people. Each of these 35 scales provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, or activity moves persons up these scales, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. So you see, I'm giving you a yardstick by which to manage human phenomena. It's very specific. More importantly, just finding out what level you or another person is at on any scale is by itself enlightening and beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
When you find the correct level, you always have a realization. You say, oh, now I understand why Mary and Joe can't get along. Okay, that's one of the ways that you know you found the right level, because there will be an epiphany at that moment. Now, each of these scales is an axis against which to evaluate human behavior and combine the empower one to understand, predict, and manage human affairs to a degree hitherto unattainable by most. Finally, once you know the actual level of any person on any scale, you can improve that person by moving them up one level at a time. I have solved the gradient problem that has bedeviled mankind for 6,000 years. Most people have problems, situations, dilemmas, difficulties. They don't know how to fix them because they don't know the gradient. Any good coach, facilitator, therapist understands that human development must occur on a gradient. That's why crash diets and crash exercise programs do not work. There has to be a gradient. You cannot take a couch potato and make them an Olympic athlete. There are too many intervening levels, okay?
Yeah.
So these scales are the gradients. I am giving you the gradients. So these are 35 different maps for success. So it's very simple. You look at the situation, you find the scale that you think is most relevant, you find your level or another person's level, depending on what you're trying to do. And then when you find the level, you have a realization, and that will make it fairly easy for you to move up to the next level up. If you're at level 4 and you try to go to level 1, 2, or 3, you will fail because it's too steep a gradient. But if you're at level 4 and you try to go to 3, you will get there because it's the next level up.
So you don't skip, you actually go level by level by level.
Actually, it's impossible to skip a level, to skip a septemic level.
Okay.
Anytime you move on these scales, it's always stepwise. You can only go to an adjacent scale. If you're at 2, you can only go to 3 or 1. That helps you because it narrows it down. It tells you exactly what's going on. It tells you what success looks like, which is the next level up, and what failure looks like, which is the next level down. And this, once you know this data and you look at human affairs, you can see that what you have is failure, 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 and more failure. Well, that is what the human race has been for 6,000 years. Okay? This gives you a very specific grip on where you are and how to advance on that axis. So you asked me for an example, so let me give you one. Okay.
Mhm.
So a common phenomena that everyone runs into is people who have romance problems, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Even married couples, right? It's very common. So let's say you have a girlfriend, Mary, and you want to help her because she's your friend. And she's been complaining to you for 6 months about her relationship. I don't know what I'm going to do about George. He got drunk again. He spent all his paycheck, right? You're hearing about this all the time, but she's still in the relationship, right?
Mhm.
So you want to help her because she's your friend. So you say, Mary, come here, let me show you something. And you open the book to the scale of relationships and you put it in front of her. Now, when she sees this, she's going to probably say, you mean there's a scale of relationships? Yes. This relationship that you have been complaining to me about for 6 months, where is it on this scale? She's going to want to know that because she's having trouble and you are opening a door. And what's going to happen is, in a matter of seconds, she will find a bracket. She'll say something like, well, I can see right away that 1, 2, or 3 do not apply to us because we're having a lot of trouble. See, she got it down to 4 in seconds. Then you say, okay, read the text, and then you'll know what this is about, and then you can get it exactly. She knows what this relationship is about. She's been living in it for a
Mhm.
year or 6 months or whatever.
Mhm.
So she reads the chapter, right? And it's in her mind. And as she's reading, she's saying, oh, yeah, I see. Yes. Then she comes back and you say to her, okay, now, so which one is it? And she will say to you, now that I read this, I can see we are at level 5 or something like that. She may not say 5, she may say 4. We don't know. But whatever it is, she will have a realization. She will say, that explains a lot. That's why we're having all this trouble. Because you see, there's an analysis of relationships in the chapter. And it's when she gets down to the right one, it's gonna be describing her relationship that she's
Mhm.
having with.
So
And
she looks and she goes, that's where we're at, right there.
yeah, you got
Mhm.
it. See, I don't know these people. I never met her, but I know this data. So when she gets it, because it's natural law, it's just like if I describe to you an elephant, right? Maybe you never saw an elephant in your, but I can describe it in such a way that when you go to a park, you say, oh, that's an
Mm.
elephant. You see?
Mhm.
Because I described it for you with
Mhm.
precision.
Right.
Okay, so the data in this book are vital for every person and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, if someone were to invite you to a rendezvous, you would certainly expect them to tell you the time, the date, the location, and perhaps also how to get there, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, needless to say, it's very difficult to get someplace if you don't know where you are, don't know where you're going, and don't know how to
Mhm.
get there. And now this sounds idiotic, but most people do this regularly. In fact, there are many people who do this consistently. They just go in circles, never get anywhere.
Yep.
All
I
right,
did
and
that for a while.
this solves that problem because it tells you across 35 axes where you are and
So,
what the next level up is.
okay, so that was kind of my next question. So we'll go back to this example of the girlfriend is having problems with her boyfriend.
Right,
She looks at the relationships and she goes, "Yep, that's where we're at. We're at level 5.
right.
We want to get to level 4, right? You want to go up. Up is more positive. Up is moving in the right direction. So we want to move to level 4.
Not
So,
necessarily.
okay, well
That's
then
up
tell
to
me about
her.
that. Tell me about
That's
that.
up to her. She might look at this and say exactly what you just said. Oh, yeah, okay, let's move this to level 4. Or she might look at it and say, I'm wasting my time on this guy.
Correct.
This
Right.
guy's this guy's a dope. I'm not
Yeah.
wasting any more time on this. And she breaks up with him. Now,
Right.
you might think she's going to be bummed out because of that, and you're wrong.
Mm-mm,
She
mm-mm.
won't. She will
She'll be
say,
relieved.
she'll be relieved. She say,
She's not
now
wasting her time.
I'm spinning my wheels. This is not going to go
Hmm.
anywhere. That could go either way. We don't know.
Right.
That's not up to me or you. That's up to her. Now,
Correct.
then you can say to her, okay, look, very good. Now, I want you to look at the scale of sexuality. You open it up, she looks at it, and you have to realize when people see these scales, they get it. It jumps off the page. It's like the periodic table of elements. You look at it and say, oh, yeah, this is cool. That's what they do, okay? Now, she'll probably say, you mean there's a scale of sexuality? And you say, yes. And where are you on the scale? You don't have to tell me if you don't want, but for your own illumination, where are you? See? And in a matter of seconds, she's going to find a bracket. She'll say, well, I can see right away that 6 or 7 have nothing to do with me. And I can also see that definitely not 1 or 2. That's way over my head. So it's got to be 2, 3, or 4. So you say, okay, read the text, and then you can get it exactly. So she reads the text, she comes back, and she finds it. She might not want to tell you what level she's at. That's right. That's why you have kind of a disclaimer. You don't have to tell me. It's for your, but she might want to tell you because you're her girlfriend, right? So she'll say, oh, now that I read this, I can see that I'm at level 4, and she'll have a realization. And she'll say, okay, that explains why I couldn't get along with Joe, but I do get along with Bill. See? Now, again, at that point, she's probably going to want to move up a level. Look, you will be able to get to this next level up. Okay? You will be able to, because it's the next level up. So you will be able to do that. And so you see, you focus the person's attention on what he actually needs to do to improve his condition.
To move to the next level up.
Right. And
do you give guidance in the book on that, or is that more?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's an entire long section in the book called, the longest section of the book is called Introduction to Septemics. And there's a whole section in it telling you how to advance yourself on a scale. There's another whole section on how to advance another person.
Okay, good.
On a scale. So you, as Mary's friend, could use that section to help her move up. You see? So if you're helping another person, it's different from helping yourself. And there are techniques, it's very specific. So let me tell you how I figured all of this out, because that really makes the light bulb go on above people's heads.
Okay.
So the story really began when I was accepted into an engineering school at the age of 16. Now, I, of course, thought at that time that I was going to be engineering something physical, like electrons or airfoils or motors or something. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, I realized I wanted to engineer the human psyche, because it's the area of greatest unknown and mystery. And more importantly, it is the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. 95% of the problems that people have in industrialized society are because they don't understand people. They don't understand the wife, the son, the father, the boss, the next door neighbor, the business partner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is why we have trouble. That's why we elect idiots to governmental offices all the time, because we don't understand them. You see? So just as an example, I know, I'm not talking about opine, I know with absolute certainty the basic purpose of every president of the United States, going back as far as Franklin Delano Roosevelt and many of the previous presidents who I studied, such as Washington and Lincoln and Jefferson. Now, what's more important than knowing someone's basic purpose? It's what he's trying to do all the time.
Right? It would create so many less misunderstandings.
Right. So, for example, when Obama ran for president, most of us had no idea who he was. Now, the people of Illinois knew who he was because they elected him to the Senate. But the rest of us in the other 49 states, he had only been in the Senate for 2 years. So we said, who's this guy running for president with this funny name? So I figured I better find out. So I conducted a study, and I was able to spot his basic purpose, which informed me who he is, what he's doing, what he's trying to do, and whether or not I should vote for him. Now, let me go back to the explanation with your friend Mary, right? So she finds her level on the scale of sexuality. I already know if two people are not at compatible levels on that scale, they will not be able to have a successful romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You have seen this. Sometimes you have a couple, they're smart, they're attractive, they're articulate, and they cannot have a successful romantic relationship. This is the type of people who, after they break up, will stay friends and like one another. Because the problem was that they were not compatible on
Romantically.
that scale. You see, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be at the same level, but you have to be at a compatible level.
What's a compatible level as opposed to obviously an
Well,
equal level?
if you look at the scale, it's patently obvious.
Okay.
I mean, one level is can have sex, and another level is cannot have sex. Well,
Okay.
duh. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So when she looks at this, she might say, because remember, she already knows this guy, right? And she's going to say, I'm at 4, but I can see that Fred is at 6. Oh, that's totally incompatible. See? And even if she moves him up, he's going to 5, which is still below her. So she might say, to hell with this guy. I'm done with this guy. You see? Or she might say, well, even though he's at that level, I still love him, so I'm going to try to help him move up. And she could do that because it tells you in the book how to assist somebody.
What if they don't want to, though?
Okay, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make him drink. Which goes to, for whom is this book written? This book is for anyone who can read English reasonably well, which is at least 1 billion people, and wants to improve himself or others. Now, some people will make the mistake of saying, well, that's everybody. No, it's not. There are many people who have absolutely no interest in helping themselves or others. These would include psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, serial murderers, corrupt politicians, war criminals, professional criminals, etc. Crazy people. Okay? There's all kinds of people who, for whatever reason, are not interested in helping themselves or others. Now, the reason I stress self or others is like this. Let's say you have some guy, hypothetically, he's got 180 IQ, he's got $50 million in the bank, and he's in perfect health. Well, you could say, well, this guy doesn't need this book. Oh, really? He's got a daughter who's getting involved in drugs. He's got a wife who cheats on him. He's got a business partner who he thinks is cooking the books. He's got a next door neighbor who calls the cops on him all the time. You see, this book could be used to resolve all of those problems that other people are giving him. So you get the daughter or the wife or the neighbor in, and you do the procedure that I just gave you. Let's say you have an employee who, he's a smart guy. He has a doctorate from MIT, and he's not doing his work. He's showing up late. He's making mistakes. You pull him in. You say, Joe, what's going on, right? How can I help you with this? And you find out his wife left him, and he's taken up alcohol. Get out the book. You see? Say, take a look at this. All right? And when you find the right scale, he'll be interested. See, you might not get it the first time. You might say, well, I don't really see what this has to do. Okay, that's fine. Look at this one. Oh, yeah, now I see. Yeah, this is what's, you see? And you will have an epiphany. You will say, this explains why I'm drinking all the time now. You see? So I could keep doing this for another half hour because when you have a relationship, that's complicated. That has multiple dimensions. It's probably not just one thing. There's probably many things.
Yeah.
And that's something you learn in engineering. Don't assume because you find something wrong, but that's the only thing that's wrong. See?
Yeah, it's usually layered.
This radio, okay, so you found a capacitor that's dead, you put it, that doesn't mean it's fixed. There could be 3 or 4 other things wrong with this radio. You see, that's how an engineer would think. And that's how you have to use this. You get the person to analyze it until he's having insight. At some point, he'll say, I got this. See? And it's not a problem for him anymore. Now, whether she decides to move the mate up the scale, all right, or just dump him, that's another thing. But let me give you another way that you could look at this.
Okay.
Let's say you have a couple that's going out and they're talking about getting married. Wouldn't it be smart for that guy to know, why does this woman want to marry me? There's a scale of motivation. See? He knows this woman. He's been with her for 2 years. So he studies the scale, right? And he thinks about it. Now, maybe he'll spot that she's at level 1. The highest motivation is love. Well, if that's why she wants to marry him, let's get the license. You see? But maybe after he does this, he says, I can see now she's at level 4. That's money motivated. She loves me because I drive a Maserati, I have a 60-foot yacht, I fly my own Learjet, and I live in a $10 million condo. That's why she wants to. You see, because this will come into focus when he gets it. You see? Because remember, when you spot the right level, you have a realization. You say, oh, now I see what's going on with this woman. Now, there's a couple of ways this can go. He might say, I don't want to marry a gold digger, and dumps her, right? But he won't be bummed out by that. He'll be relieved. Thank you for helping me with this. Or there might be another guy who's willing to marry this woman who's a gold digger. So think about this. There are many young, beautiful women who marry unattractive, elderly, rich men, right? It's a common scenario. Happens all the time, right? You have some guy, he's 55, he's 50 pounds overweight. He never was good looking even when he was young, but he's got $50 million, right? So, and now he meets this 23-year-old Miss Maryland, right? So, Miss Maryland gets a diamond ring, a pearl necklace, a mink coat, a Corvette, and a credit card. She's happy. He's happy because he's got a 23-year-old wife. You see? So for him, it works. So none of this is a value judgment. This is whatever works for you.
Right.
You might look at this and say, this guy might not care if she's a gold digger. He might, you want to go to Vegas for the weekend? Here's $5,000. Have a good time. I'll see you on Monday. See, that's fine for him. The other guy didn't want that. So this whole system is like that. There's no judgment involved in it. It's just seeing what's there.
It's seeing your reality.
Right.
It is. It really is a seeing right where you're at and understanding where you're at. And I would imagine, I'm sorry, say that again.
And where the other person is at too.
Right. And I would imagine too, like, I'm looking at it right now, like if I wanted to improve something in my life, right? And so I would go on, and I would imagine if I went on and I worked through the scales of, I don't know, give me an example of an individual scale.
The scale of trust.
Okay. Scale of trust.
Choice.
Yeah, that's a great one. Oh, that's a great one. And I find out I'm at a 5 and I want to move up to 4. I would imagine as I work on this personally, that obviously it's going to change me, right? It's going to improve my life. And my goal is to work up that scale. But imagine how that would affect others and how powerful that would be.
Yes, that's right. I already know anyone who masters this book will have an impact on society.
Right. It makes sense.
Because he will necessarily draw others into it.
Right. People are going to notice it. They're going to see something is different about you, and then they'll ask you.
Right. They'll say, I noticed you're much more decisive lately. You used to sort of hem and haw about, should I do this? Should I do that? I don't know what to do. Now Well, yeah, you see, I did this scale of choice and I moved up a level. What's the scale of, well, here's the book. Oh, thank you. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So, and guaranteed what's going to happen is, as you get this, things are going to come up and you're going to use it on other people. So you see your husband is having trouble with his business, right? I don't even know if you have a husband, but if you do,
Yes.
you say, come here, Joe, look at the scale of management. Scale of management? You mean there's a scale of management? Yes. And he's going to be interested in this because he's got a business. He's going to say, wow, this is cool. See? And you could help him with his business. And he's off to the races. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So then at some point, he's going to say, what was this book you showed me with the scale of management? Well, here it is. Read it. Well, better off get your own copy. I want to use this myself.
This is my book.
So, and of course, it's available hardbound, softbound, ebook. It's very easy to get. You can download it in 3 minutes and have it right there in front of you. So so his business is going to get better. All of a sudden, instead of making 10,000 a week, they're making 20,000 a week. His manager's going to come and say, "What did you do? How did this? Why are we making all this money?" Well, you see, I read the scale of management, and it told me that if you don't do blah, 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 oh, really? Let me see that. You see, and that's how it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
It is a grassroots thing because it works, and it works because it's natural law. Now, let me explain something. A few people have said to me, what book is your book like? Having gone to school for 28 years and being a well-read person, I have to say in all candor, I don't think there's ever been a book like this. But each one of these scales is expressed in what you could call a table or a spreadsheet. In other words, it's not, a scale is a line, but this is a plane of data. So when you look at it, it's very much like looking at the periodic table of elements, which is another plane of data. So this is like the periodic table before the corresponding 35 subjects that I read to you 5 minutes ago. So there's a periodic table for attack. Well, most people will say, what's that? But when you read the scale, they say, oh, yeah, this is like, I see, this is going on all the time with everybody. See, every human being is at some level on every scale. Now, of course, you can ignore the data. It's just like people ignore data all the time. People know that smoking causes cancer and heart disease and emphysema. They still do it. Right? They ignore the data. Okay, but it's much smarter to use the data, to take advantage of it. It's sitting there. You are at some level on this scale. And if you study the book the way it's written, that it tells you how to study it, you'll get it. We'll see, oh, I see my level. And then you can move up to another level, and now you're doing better. Furthermore, I said there are 35 scales, but some of them are general scales and some of them are specific scales. Let me tell you what that means. In a general scale, once you find your level, you're done. You can try to move up to the next level, but that's it. Now, it's not about context. It is a general condition. Like the scale of basic purposes. You have one of 7 basic purposes, and those 7 are listed on that. And when you find it, you'll have a big epiphany, and your life will be clarified. Because what will happen is you'll throw out the other 6 levels, say, that's not for me. This level is me. This is what I'm about. You see? And then you know who you are, what you're doing, and it clarifies everything. So you don't get dragged into things that have nothing to do with you. See, so you don't make that mistake anymore.
Yeah.
You can get involved with somebody who's at a different level. He's trying to do a completely different thing. It has nothing to do with you. And it makes a mess. Now, as opposed to, I talked about the scale of motivation. The scale of motivation is a specific scale, meaning it's context driven. So what that means is you could say, what is my motivation toward my husband? What is my motivation toward my son? What is my motivation toward my sister? What is my motivation toward my brother, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? You could use it. They're all different contexts. And then you can say, what is my boss's motivation toward me? What is my next door neighbor's motivation toward me? What is my friend's motivation toward me? So you're doing it on a reverse vector, using it hundreds. So you could just take that one scale and completely clarify your whole life because you know everybody's motivation.
So let me ask you this. So if I'm trying to figure out, let's say my husband's motivation on something, is it just so that it's basically I'm trying to figure out his motivation so I just have an understanding. It's not for me to try to go and change him. I want to make that clear, right? It's not for me to try to go change him per se. It's just to help me understand where he's at in that place. And if I did want to help him, if I wanted to go further, then I could show him that motivation and hopefully he'll be open to having an epiphany like I did. And
that's right.
But it can be used also just for the purpose of understanding people, which that is huge right there. Just because sometimes there's going to be somebody like your boss or somebody, you just want to learn to understand so that you can better work with that person and interact with that person, not try to control them or change them, but just to understand him. And I know I haven't read your book yet. I am actually going to get it because I'm very curious. But I actually know that to be true in my life. And that is what I try to do. I do try to understand people, and not that I change myself to accommodate them, but just so that I can understand them and I know better how to interact with them and try to understand their needs better and their wants. And then we have a better relationship, whether it's an intimate one or it's a boss employee.
Right. That's right. Let me give you an example. As a serious scholar, I, of course, studied World War II and Adolf Hitler, like everybody else in history. And as a student of military science, which is another subject that I studied, I really was given pause because I would read about what Hitler did and I'd say, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. He had a non-aggression pact with Stalin, okay? And his right-hand man, Goering, said, if the Russians get in the war, we will lose. Hitler violated the non-aggression pact, and it happened exactly the way Goering said. It was the Russians that wiped them out. No, the Russians lost 20 million people. They just kept sending hordes and hordes and hordes. So they would come, right, send 1,000 men, and 100 Germans would exterminate them. Okay? They'd send another 1,000 men. But every time this happened, the Germans would lose 2 or 3 guys. And after a while, that 100-man company was down to 5 guys. And the next time they sent 1,000 guys, they killed them all. Okay, that's exactly what happened in World War II. So I'm looking at this from a military science point of view. I'm thinking, wait a minute, why would he do this? Well, when you realize that his basic purpose was destruction, the lowest basic purpose of all is to destroy. Now, many people look at that and say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Why would somebody's basic purpose be to destroy? Well, that goes into, it's like between him and his psychiatrist. Why?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's there. Okay, Pol Pot was the same way. He was a fundamentally destructive person. Charles Manson, also fundamentally destructive person. People don't understand that. But once you understand it, as I describe it in excruciating detail in the book, you say, oh, now I understand why he did this and this and this and this. Hitler made 6 or 8 catastrophic mistakes between 1939 and 1945, military mistakes, which I, as a student of military science, just scratched my head until I understood that he was a destructive person. He wasn't just fighting the Allies, he was destroying the Wehrmacht. He was destroying Germany. He was destroying his own family. That is what those people do. Okay, well, you're going to say, well, isn't that crazy? Yes, it's crazy.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's why if you spot somebody like that, you want to get away from him, right? So anyone who is at or near the bottom of any scale, that is a red light going on saying danger, danger, danger. Okay. Now I run into these people. I use this all the time. Like I'll meet somebody either online or in 3 dimensions, and I'll spot a guy as being low at or near the bottom of a scale. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's very specific. And I say, whoop, I'm not going to mess with this guy. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. I wish you the best of luck. Bye-bye. We're done. Okay. Now, that is why I can absolutely guarantee that this book will prevent catastrophes, dilemmas, bankruptcies, divorces, fistfights, indictments, etc., 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 because you are forewarned. You see somebody and you say, oh, I'm not going to mess with this guy. Now, some people are smart enough to do that anyway, just because they're intuitive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But this gives you something really specific, so you know what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But like I met some host online, and his behavior was insane. Actually, I met a few guys like that. They weren't all the same, but I just thought, this guy's crazy. I could see he was at or near the bottom of the scale. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Goodbye. I'm not arguing with anybody. I'm not judging anybody. I'm not telling anybody, but
Yeah.
I'm out of that. I'm out of that. Now, to be perfectly candid, when I was a boy or a young man, this data didn't exist because I hadn't discovered it yet. So I made the same stupid mistakes that everybody else makes. Now, for me, that cannot happen, does not happen, will not happen, because I know what I'm dealing with. But let me give you another example so you see how easy this is to use. Suppose you invited me over to your house. You say, Jim, come over and see my garden. Great, I'd love to see your garden. So I come over, right? And I go in there and there's tulips, peonies, hydrangeas, roses, forget-me-nots, violets, right? Because I know flowers. I know that you have to care for a tulip completely differently from the way you care for a rose. Genetically, they're completely different. Now, if you bring some 5-year-old kid into that garden, he's not going to do that. He doesn't know all these names and all the different types of flowers and what they do and how they act and how to take. He just says, oh, these are pretty and they smell good. That's all he knows, right? Now, most people are like that little kid as regards human beings.
It's lacking self-awareness.
It's not just self-awareness, it's other awareness too.
Well, that's within self-awareness is other awareness. It's awareness towards yourself and awareness of others, and
Right.
really how your actions affect them and how they behave.
Right. But the big thing is, remember, it's the subtitle of this is Analysis, Prediction, and Management of Human Affairs. So you can analyze it. That's what you do with the scale. You analyze. Right? Then you have your realization. It's analyzed. Because of that, you can predict. You know what this guy's going to do. And because of you can predict it, you can now manage it.
Right. And protect yourself.
And it goes the other way too, right? I met somebody some years ago when I moved to Arizona, and I could see this person was at or near the top of many of these scales. Okay? As soon as I met the person, I could see, oh, this is an upscale person, right? So I said, yes, this is somebody I want to be around. I still am interacting with that person, okay? We had a very fruitful interaction. And I must say, it's not that she's high on all scales. So when she's like at a lower level, I can see that too. And I sort of know how to work around it. See?
Yeah.
Instead of making it an issue. So it's very much like my whole philosophy of people, which I developed when I was young, which is if you have a rabbit, rabbits can't swim, don't put them in water, right? Don't throw him off the roof of your house, he can't fly, but let him run. He can do that very well. If you have a fish, don't expect him to run. He can't run, right? And he can't fly, but he can swim really well. So that's how people are. Some people are like a fish. Some people are like a rabbit. Some people are like an ox. Okay? That is what we see in astrology. Oriental astrology and Occidental astrology. They liken people to animals.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is like a scorpion. And if you know how scorpions behave, oh, now I understand this
That
guy.
makes sense.
See? So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it works. Because now, of course, it used to be that people understood animals much better than they do today.
Mm-hmm.
But these systems developed thousands of years ago when
Mm-hmm.
animals were a big part of people's lives. That's why they did it that way. This guy is like the ox. Well, everybody knew about the ox.
Right, right.
So really, he's like an ox? Oh, yeah. And you look at him and you see, yeah, this guy is like an ox. See, that's why it works.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a similar thing, but it's much more sophisticated because you have 35 scales, but remember, most of them are specific scales, which means you can use it many different ways, many different contexts. So it really gets into hundreds or thousands of
Mm-hmm.
scales because you can analyze, well, where am I on the scale of choice? Where's my friend Mary on the scale of choice? Where's my brother Bill on the scale of choice? You see, and you can
Mm-hmm.
analyze all these people, and then you understand them. You can predict what they're going to do.
Yeah, and you can interact with them so much easier. It's
Yes,
really interesting when you do understand people,
right,
and that is something that, again, it goes with self-awareness because you do have to make effort to pay attention to what the other person is doing and what,
right.
to learn about them. If you don't have that kind of self-awareness, you're not going to know. And and it's even simple things like, knowing what they like and don't like. But it just helps you to interact with them so much easier. I'm trying to think of an example real quick, and I can't think of one, but that's what I imagine that this would help us do as well.
Right.
If it, first and foremost to help ourselves, right? Because when we help ourselves, then we're equipped to be able to go out and help others,
Yes,
right?
that's
So
right.
it starts there, but it also, I like the option that if someone is open to it and you want to show them and they can see where they are on that scale, and you want to move up the scale, here's what you need to do. I mean, I love that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Now, don't think that everybody you show this to is going to get it
Right, right,
because the key word to this whole system is insight.
right.
It requires some insight in order to use it.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Whether you're analyzing yourself or another, you need some insight. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when a person is at or near the top of any scale, it's because he's insightful in that area.
Yes.
When a person is at or near the bottom of any scale, it's because he lacks insight in that
Mm-hmm.
area.
Mm-hmm.
So if a guy is down at 6 or 7, he has little or no insight in that area. That's why he's at that level.
Mm-hmm.
So he may not get it. He might say, this doesn't make any sense to me. Well, you're out of luck at that because
Yeah.
that is why it is an established fact, which is known throughout the entire industrialized world amongst the mental health profession, that psychopaths and sociopaths do not make progress in therapy.
Mm-mm. Neither do
They are,
narcissists.
well, narcissists make progress, but very slowly.
uh,
That is the data that is taught. They do make progress, it's just slow progress. But that's different from no progress. Now, those people are at or near the bottom of many of these scales.
mm-hmm.
Now, the truth is that there are very few people who are at or near the top of all the scales, less than 1%. There's a comparatively larger number who are at or near the bottom of all the scales,
I believe it.
maybe 4%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and these are the people who cause all the trouble.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of us, for the most part, are high on some scales and low on others.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a famous example that everybody already knows. Everybody knows that Bill Clinton is a smart man. He was a Rhodes Scholar, okay? Even if you listen to his opponents, his enemies. I mean, the Bush family praised him,
Mm-hmm.
They could see this is a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. And for a variety of political science is one of my areas of expertise. I can tell you in chapter and verse all the smart things he did that enabled him to turn around bad situations, get reelected, lead with a high approval rating.
Yeah.
So if I were going to talk to somebody about politics, I would love to talk to him. I have listened to him speak many times. He has a keen mind and he analyzes it. He gives you a straight answer. He knows what he's talking about. Okay. It's the opposite extreme of Biden, who goes, ha, 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 ha. You know, it's the opposite extreme.
Bless his heart. Yeah.
Both in the same political party, right?
Right.
Now, but anybody who's been paying attention in the last 35 years knows that Bill Clinton is a serial abuser of women.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no, Hillary knows it. Everybody knows this, right? They
Mm-hmm.
sued him. They have had women who came forward on video and told in detail how he raped them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I'm not telling tales at a school. Everybody knows this already. Just
Right.
go on.
This is all public knowledge.
Right. Just go on the internet and Google it and you'll see
Mm-hmm.
this stuff. Now, so although I would love to discuss politics with him, if I had a sister or a daughter, I would say to them, don't go out with Bill Clinton. You're making a big mistake. Don't do it. I know he's smart and I know he's sophisticated and used to be a very handsome man, but don't go out with him. Okay? So that's high in one scale, low on another scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great example. That is a really
Right.
great example.
Right.
And I can see that. And that's kind of frightening. That one's kind of frightening, honestly. You know, someone that is so smart, you know, and has so much talent. And then he has that very, very dark side to him.
Right. So could you use this book to get him to improve in that area of his life?
Probably not. I don't
know.
think he cares.
And the reason I say I don't know is who knows what goes on in somebody's mind.
Exactly.
You know? And the other thing is, I already know he's very smart. This is not some dopey guy, okay?
And what he has done has worked for him over the years, clearly.
In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. I mean, he completely mishandled all these women.
Yeah.
You know, when
we're finding out more and more too.
When they came forward, if he were smart, he would have just said, here's $250,000, go away, okay? And settled out of court. Instead, he let them sue him. It was a big mistake. And then the further stupidity was getting on the stand and committing perjury and suborning others to perjury. And that's why he was impeached, because of those two things. That's why he was disbarred. So he obviously did not have clarity to know what to do about this.
Yeah, obviously. He did nothing to ever improve it, ever stop.
Right.
Because we're finding out there's more. There's more
yes.
and more and more, right?
Yes, he was involved with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yep.
Right? So, you know, the quote was, Bill likes them young.
Yeah.
So God knows, you know.
I know.
Anyway. So I don't want to.
No, but that's a good example of showing. Yeah, I mean, we're not bashing on Bill,
right.
But it's a great example because it's somebody who has, like I said, has so much talent, who is so smart, has with what he had, what he could have done.
That's right.
And yet he's got that dark side that completely negates all this good that I'm sorry, this is my opinion, that negates a lot of the good because you're doing so much damage and hurting so many people.
That's right. Now, look, it is common knowledge now that JFK was a Lothario. He would have one starlet coming in the front door of the White House while another was going out the back door.
And his wife looked the other way, unfortunately.
That's right. And so did the press, because the press knew, but
everybody loved him.
It was a different country back then. I still love him. Okay? Now, he handled it well. He did not make a big mess out of this. He was smart enough to fool around with these women and not have it become a big blow up. You see?
I know, that's true.
He was able to navigate it more swiftly. Now, if you look at Clinton was smart enough to get Dick Morris to come in to advise him. And Dick Morris said to him, do this, 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 and Bill did it. And that's how he got reelected. Dick Morris gave him good advice. He taught him how to triangulate. That was all Dick Morris, okay? Well, Dick Morris now is a Republican, okay?
Mm.
So obviously the political parties have all shifted since then.
Yeah.
But the point is, see, in that, I'm sure there had to be people around saying, look, Bill, just give her the $400,000 and get rid of her. You know, he could have gotten that money from somewhere.
He's
Okay.
got so much money. Oh,
Well, he does now. When he went into office, he didn't have a lot. But
yeah, that's true.
but he could have gotten the money from somewhere. He could have gotten the money from Jeffrey Epstein, who was a billionaire.
I know, right?
Right?
Yeah, they aren't going to own their stuff, though. Neither one of them.
Right. So I'm just saying, he was smart enough to take the advice of Dick Morris, a shrewd political operative. Okay. But I'm sure that there were people there telling him what to do, and he did not take their advice.
Why do you think that is?
Because when you're at or near the bottom
of a scale,
you lack insight. That's why.
So what scale? What scale is he at the bottom of? Well,
the scale of sexuality.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't know if there was maybe another one as well.
Yeah, well, probably there are.
Yeah.
But that's just a good example of so people can see how this works.
Right.
You know, now I have actually calculated that about half of the human race wants to improve oneself or others. About half. Okay. Now, since there are about 1 billion people in the world who can read this book, and about half of them want to improve themselves, that means the reading public for this book is 500 million people. So that is why I'm talking to you, to get people to find out about it, because my motto is, your success is my reward. Now, I want to finish the story about how I got to this, because I sort of got off on a tangent.
Yeah.
All right, so when I decided I wanted to engineer the human psyche, I had a long career as a human development engineer doing exactly that. Okay? Now, all of my clients improved in the various ways that they wanted to improve. And I started to notice, just incidentally, that I could predict the outcome of the session. I would know, okay, this guy is doing this and it's going to work out, and it would. So I started making notes. I never told this to anyone, but I made notes. And as the decades rolled by, this just happened over and over. And I came to realize that the client would be at a specific level on a specific scale that I had previously observed. And as he improved, he would go up to that next level. Now, this happened thousands and thousands of times over a 40-year period.
Oh, wow.
So what was happening was, each time this happened, it verified my hypothesis. It verified my hypothesis. That is what science is about. You have a hypothesis and you test it and it's verified. So by 1995, a couple of things happened. First of all, by 1995, I had about 32 scales that had just fallen out in front of me by direct observation. There was no theory of septemics, but I just had been making notes, okay? The other thing is, I had a particularly difficult client who I was pondering, and I realized that this client was at a level on a particular scale that I had not previously observed. So this scale was a 6-level scale, and by then I absolutely knew that it was correct. In other words, to the degree that 6-level scale could be applied, it was always correct. Just like the 3 laws of motion. So it was obvious to me where to insert this into that scale. That was not a question. And when I inserted it, the scale manifested mathematically, meaning all of these mathematical data jumped out at me without my looking for them. So this scale went from being a line to a plane. It became a plane of data. I saw all of this ramifications and implications of this scale, and it became a whole body of data. This is what later became the scale of basic purposes. You can see that on my website for free. It gives a whole table of data about this, how it all fits together. It's very specific. It's like a Chinese puzzle. Now, when I saw this, I said, whoa, I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, it has to be natural law because it has mathematics embedded in it. Like the Fibonacci sequence, for example. It's natural law. There are millions and millions of living creatures that constructed themselves according to Fibonacci numbers long before Fibonacci was ever born. It's a natural law. You don't have to take anybody's word for it. Get a sunflower seed and look at it. You can count, there's a Fibonacci number going this way and a Fibonacci number going the other way. Or a pine cone, it's the exact same thing. They don't know anything about numbers, right? Let alone Fibonacci. But he came along and saw this pattern and said, wait a minute. And he was able to reverse engineer the formula. So we now know the Fibonacci numbers to infinity because of him.
Wow.
That is how this subject is. It's the same thing. So when I saw that this was natural law, then I thought, wait a minute. I wonder how many of these other scales are also 7-level scales that had simply not been developed all the way because I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients and making notes. I was very busy with my clients, trying to keep up with my clients. And, I had a schedule. I had to be there for my clients. And I said, wait a minute, let me look at this. So knowing what I was looking for, I inspected those other scales. And because I knew what I was looking for, in a short period of time, each of them went to 7 levels. And as it went to 7 levels, it manifested mathematically. And in a short period of time, I had 32 scales that all had 7 levels and all had mathematics embedded in them. I said, wait a minute. I found something here. This looks to me like a new subject. So then I thought, wait a minute. I could go from helping people by the hundreds, which is what I had been doing as human development engineer, to helping people by the millions. I put this in a book and get it out to people. So I'm going to have to write a book. So the first draft was completed in December of 95. And I sent it out in a transcript form to colleagues of mine, all of whom had graduate degrees in a variety of subjects, right? And they all responded very positively. They all had different responses, but the responses were distinctly positive. And that told me this is exactly what I think it is. It's a new subject based on natural law that people can get. It's not that hard to understand. So then I said, okay, I'm gonna perfect this. And I spent the next 25 years working on this book.
Oh, wow.
And you have to realize that there are 35 scales, each of which has 7 levels. That's 245 different levels, each of which had to be ascertained, verified, and expressed in a way that makes sense to people. Moreover, simply having the scales is not enough to really help people that much. In other words, they all had to be developed into a plane, a body of data. That was not easy. So I already told you how I found the phenomena in the first place as I was handling my clients. Although I did find 3 more scales as I was writing the book. But then I had to take this data and use it to craft a workable philosophic system. I have to understand, to engineering, opinion and belief are utterly irrelevant. Okay? So I was in an engineering school with 2,000 other guys. We were all very much alike. Very practical people. Not people who are going to believe anything woo-woo. Okay? So, okay, I have to make this work. It took 20 years to do that. To use the data to construct a workable philosophy. Because, for example, in each scale, I had to say, well, what is the scale measuring? In other words, we have a scale, but what is it a scale of? what is the axis here? See, that took a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, it took many years to figure that out. What are we actually measuring? I mean, the scale of basic purposes, I had the scale for easily 15 years before I knew what the axis was. But it was actually a scale of basic purposes. That was not obvious. So I had to work with this, you see, to get it. So meanwhile, the most time-consuming aspect of this was expressing this in a way that would make sense to the average reader.
Right.
And I know I succeeded at that because I've been watching people use this for 28 years now.
Mm-hmm.
They get it.
Mm-hmm.
They look at it and they say, oh, yeah, this is cool. And I'll tell you an anecdote to underscore this. About 22 years ago, I'm talking to a friend of mine about politics and government. Just two guys standing around talking. And he didn't even know I was writing a book. He didn't know anything about systemics. And the word systemics didn't even exist. I was just working on this thing. I said, wait a minute, let me show you something. So I had this transcript. I pulled out the scale of government and I handed it to him. And he took it. I didn't say a word. I didn't even say what it was or anything. I just handed it to him. And he looked at it. And in about 1 second, he pointed. He said, there, I'm right there.
Mm-hmm.
He found his level on that scale without my even suggesting that that's what it was for.
Mm-hmm.
That's how easy this is to use. I'll give you another example. This happens often. A guy will be looking at a certain scale, right? He's not thinking about, let's say, for example, his mother, right? Not in his mind. He's just looking at this book, right? And he'll get down to a certain level. So wait a minute. This is my mother. This is exactly how she is. This is how she behaves. She's a level 4 on this scale. I don't know this guy's mother. I might not even know the guy,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I got it. Because it's natural, I got it exact.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not thinking about his mother, but it's so precise that he
Mm-hmm.
says, this is my mother. This happens all the time with this. See, you're not even trying to analyze your mother. It just jumps out at you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like what I was saying about realizing that Hitler's basic purpose was to destroy. Then I understood
Why he made the choices.
why he did all those stupid things.
Mm-hmm.
Destructive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he was very lucky that the many attempts to kill him did not succeed because his generals knew that he was a nut and they knew he was incompetent. He was crazy. He was stupid. He was ignorant. He didn't know what he was doing. He had been a corporal when he fought in the war. He didn't go to military school. Germany had the best military minds in the world, like Erwin Rommel, for example, Heinrich Johl. They're very, very great generals. He didn't listen to them because he was destructive.
Mm-hmm. That's not what he wanted to hear. He did not want to hear about that. He wanted to hear about destruction.
Right. That's what you get. You see, he was several of his generals told him, if America gets into the war, we will lose because their industrial capacity exceeds the entire industrial capacity of Europe. And he declared war on them gratuitously. He didn't have to do that. That was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
That was like Bill Clinton not paying off the girl and going on the stand and perjuring himself. It was dopey. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's something wrong with his mind.
I know.
So you know, if you looked at him sideways, he had you shot. So everybody was afraid of him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there was that plot that almost killed him, but he was saved just by happen. He got injured, but he didn't get killed. So when I first discovered this, I said, oh, I've been wondering about this for 30 years. Now I understand what's going on. And that happens to me all the time. You know, I'll look up a certain person and I'll say, okay, you know, like people who are in the public eye, like Biden, I understand Biden very well. Okay. I understand Donald Trump very well. He's been in the public eye long enough. I understand him. I understood him before he was running for president because I'm a New Yorker.
Mm-hmm.
Around all the time. Every other day he was in the news. Okay. So I'm not saying vote for him, don't vote for him. I like him. I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, we're not doing politics. Yeah.
I'm just saying I understand him.
Mm-hmm. That's what this is. This is what I love. And this is something I say a lot in my podcast. And this was something that someone told me one time. It was really profound. Rather than be judgmental, be curious. And that's what you're doing. You're
Yes.
being curious. You're not going at this, I'm going to figure this person out. And, it's like you keep saying, it's to help me understand them.
Yes.
It's to help me understand them so that I can interact with them in a better way.
Yes. Yes. And in analyzing people, I have certain realization. Okay, this guy's at this level. That tells me what to do. It tells me maybe to tiptoe around it, or it tells me what to expect from him. So, I mean, if you get a mosquito in your house and it bites you, well, what do you expect? That's what mosquitoes do. Okay? You don't really have a choice. You better kill that mosquito. Okay? Because mosquitoes carry malaria.
Right.
Okay. So don't say, oh, I'm going to have good thoughts and the mosquito won't bite me. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Or like, it's like understanding cats and dogs. They're different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I get along very well with animals. It's not just that I like them. They like me. I understand them. I understand cats. If you treat a cat like a dog, he will not be happy.
Yeah,
if you treat a dog like a cat, you have to know dogs. Okay, this is how dogs are. And that you keep your dog happy, you keep your cat happy. Okay, and if you don't know that, like there are people who don't understand either one, and they can't figure out why they can't get along with their pet. They don't understand them. I mean, there are books on this. There's websites. Once you understand cats, how they think, they're a certain way. Now, if that's not what you want, okay, give them away to somebody else and get a dog. But you got to understand it. And people are the same way. The difference is there are 8 billion people. Every one of them is unique.
Yeah, everyone's custom.
And every one of them is at some level on every scale. So whatever is going on, you can always analyze it. Now you have to realize some people could think of this in terms of behavior, psychology. This is way beyond psychology. There's a scale of civilization. I told you how civilizations evolve. There's a scale of spiritual identity. It tells you the 7 levels that a person can think of himself spiritually. There's a scale of politics, right? These have nothing to do with psychology. These are outside of psychology. So this is a separate subject. Now, look, I tried for many years to try to fit this into the context of something else. I had this thing. I said, well, where does this fit? Like what shelf is this going to go on in the library? Or, it's its own subject. Now, that is the problem with this, because most people live in a box.
Yeah.
They sort of know who they are politically, who they are religiously, who they are sexually, who they are economically, right? They don't want to get out of the box. This book requires you to get out of your box. The whole point of it is to get you out of your box, right? The guy's at level 5, level 5, level 5, level 5, level 5. He's going around, he's having trouble because that's a low level on any scale, right? So if you get him to analyze it, he's got to get out of his box to say, oh, I see. And now you move him up to level 4. Now he's different. He's a different person. He's out of that box. So that is the problem with this subject. Because first of all, most people don't read books, period, nowadays. Secondly, of the ones who do read books, most of them read fiction books. This is nonfiction.
Yeah.
Thirdly, of the people who read nonfiction, more than 90% of them are in a niche. Mathematicians read mathematics books, historians read history books, psychologists read psychology books, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? This book does not fit into any of those niches. And if you try to approach this from some preconceived notion, you will not get it. It is not a part of
Yeah.
it is not a
That's-
part of psychology.
Mhm.
It's something else. So realize I spent 25 years writing the book. I spent 3 years promoting the book. And before that, I had at least another 20 years of just finding these data
Mhm.
and writing them down. So this is very real to me. I know what this is. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that the scales are correct. They're correct the way the Pythagorean theorem is correct. They're correct the way the periodic table is correct. They're correct the way Ohm's law is correct. Now, I could see somebody quibbling with words because writing is an art. And
Mhm.
I spent years saying, what should I call this level?
Mhm.
And I'll give you a perfect example. Level 2 on the scale of sexuality, if you look at the scale, it says take it or leave it. Well, what kind of a name is that for a level? Well, I looked at this for a long time. There are people whose attitude about sex is take it or leave it. In other words, if the girl says yes, that's fine. If she says no, that's fine too. He can take it or leave it.
Mhm.
Not too many people get to that level. That's true of every scale. Not too many people get to the top of the scales. Okay. So I thought, well, what should I call? I'll just call it take it or leave it because that's what it is.
Mhm.
So everybody who knows English knows what take it or leave it means. So when you read this in context, you say, oh, I see. Yeah, wow, this guy can take it or leave it. See, that's a very liberating place to be in.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'll tell you something else. Most people have difficulty understanding the very top and the very bottom of the scales because they're out of their reality.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
They may never have seen anybody in that level.
Mhm.
So, like, for example, Hitler is what I call subversive. His objective is destruction. Most people are going to say, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. Of course, it doesn't make any sense to you. You're not crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Or, for example, the other end of that is, excuse me, level 1 is the saint.
Mm.
Saint's objective is transcendence.
Mhm.
Most people don't understand that. If they're not at that level, they don't get it. So this is like St. Francis of Assisi. He came from a rich merchant family. His father expected him to take over the business and continue to live the life of a rich Italian merchant, right? But Assisi was at a higher level. He wanted transformation. He wanted to transcend. So he gave up all of his riches and he started the Franciscan order. Okay. Now, this is a bona fide saint. He went around performing miracles. You know, in the Catholic Church, in order to be canonized as a saint, there has to be proof from at
Mhm.
least 2 people that witnessed you performing a miracle.
Mhm.
You don't have to be Catholic to perform miracles, but I'm just saying, his father didn't get it. He didn't. Why are you doing this? Don't you want to have gold and diamonds and
Mhm.
pearls? No, he didn't want that. He just wore a plain robe and ate his crust of bread and went around helping people.
Mhm.
Like Mother Teresa also is at the same level.
Mhm.
She spent her life helping people.
Mhm.
Okay? Her goal was to transcend. Now, if you talk to a Christian, well, what do you mean? What's this transcend? Well, I want to go to heaven and become an angel. Okay, that's the way a Christian. But if you talk to a Buddhist, they'll say, well, I want to attain nirvana. They're both wanting to transcend, you see?
Mhm.
And a lot of people look at this and say, this guy's nuts. You know, like you have the middle class family and the kid joins the Hare Krishnas. Okay? He doesn't want to become an actuary. He doesn't want to become a lawyer or a doctor. Okay?
Yeah.
So they don't understand it. So I'm just letting you know when you study this, most people are going to have trouble with the extremes if they have trouble at all.
Mhm. That
So
makes sense.
yeah. So that's what this is about.
Well, this is fascinating. I mean, this is so interesting. What would you like to leave with the listeners? That's what
Right.
I'm trying to say.
Well, the first thing I want to say is I want to invite them to my website, which is
Okay.
septemics.com, Septemics, where you can see what many readers have said about it, what many journalists have written about it, what the reviews are.
There's a
You can,
lot.
and you can read sections of the book itself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even a 15-minute pre-recorded introduction to
Mm-hmm.
Septemics, which you can listen to, which explains it to a new person.
Yeah, I watched that. I did when we first, before we met on our first interview, I went on the website and checked it out and watched the video as well. And it's really informative. And yeah, there's a lot of good information on there as well. But the
Yeah,
way you explain it, you really do a great job breaking it down and making it simple for us.
right.
Um, because that's sometimes that's
Yeah.
what I need. I just need
And
someone to explain it to me.
the reason for that is I started school when I was 3, and I have
Mm.
been involved in education to this very day my entire life.
Yeah.
Okay. I worked with hundreds and hundreds of people, and I sort of learned how to get people to see things,
Mm-hmm.
Like I started tutoring algebra when I was 18. Okay. I was a math whiz. So, I get some student who, nice person, going to college, was having trouble. And I would have to figure out, how do I explain this to this person to get it? And the person, oh yeah, now I see what you mean. And so I sort of developed that as a skill throughout my life.
And I appreciate that because I will tell you when someone has, the level of intellect that you have, it's hard to explain something simple and it can be frustrating for you. And on my end, because I'm someone who you would have to really explain something to for me to understand it, that's intimidating. And it kind of goes back to also my childhood abuse where, I was not good at math. I struggled with math. I really struggled and I didn't have the support system and I got shamed. And so
Right,
to this day, that's something that I actually work on. And so I appreciate when someone who has the knowledge that you have and, you can simple it for me so that I can understand it and therefore help
right.
others.
And you have to realize, as a human development engineer, I had hundreds of clients that came to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
First thing I would do is I would conduct a long interview, right? No charge for the interview. That's my data, right? So I really could see who this person is, what's going on, what he thinks. And by the way, I was using biofeedback through all of this. So I was getting clear electronic indications of matching everything the person said.
Right.
But once I started the session, right, probably not the same day, I had to be right. In other words, I had to zero right in on this person. There was no thing about, I couldn't hem and haw and say, well, what a blah, 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 blah. I had to go right in and know what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I developed that skill over the years. I got better and better and better. And once I started realizing that the client was at a level that I knew and that he was going to go up to the next level, that only made me better at what I did. I never told that to anybody. I don't tell my clients anything other than maybe the date or time of the session. Yeah, show up at 2 o'clock, be well rested and well fed so you feel okay, and we'll have a session. That's it. That's all I tell them. Because I use Socratic dialogue. And if you read the Socratic dialogues, which are written by Plato, Socrates' student, it's a whole way of educating the person by getting him himself to figure out what's going on.
Yes. That
Because
is the key.
Then he has a realization.
Exactly.
Right. So a guy would come in to me, right? Why are you here? Well, can't get along with my wife. We might get a divorce. Okay, right? So we're going along, and at some point he says, wait a minute. I just realized she's just like my mother. No wonder I can't get along with her.
Exactly.
He has a realization. See, and he's happy with that. So we
Because
end
it
up
explains so much. It helps you to understand. I mean,
right.
I'm definitely someone In order for me to do something, I need to understand it.
Right.
I just need to understand it. Some people don't. And that's why I say someone like you who can explain it when it can be frustrating to explain it and make it simple for us.
Right.
But I do need to understand. And that's why, I wanted to, when we had our pre-interview, I really wanted to hear how you explained it because I wanted to be able to understand it,
Right.
because yeah.
Yeah, so I've had a lifetime of experience at working with people one-on-one to explain things, to
Yeah.
connect with them, to see, to ask the right question. That's that as far as human development engineer, that was the real genius, to
Yeah.
ask the right question.
Mm-hmm.
Now it goes into all kinds of technical things about how I knew what question to ask. It's very complicated. But I wrote the book so that these scales wrap around the reader.
Mm.
So the way you experience this is, let's say you want to buy a new dress, right? So you go to a dress store. There's 10,000 dresses in there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You have to know the right size, the right fabric, the right occasion, et cetera, right? There's like 10 or 12 different things you want, right? But you may not even have an idea really what you're looking for.
Yeah.
It's not like you're going and walking, I want a black crepe dress with spaghetti straps. I was like, it might not be that specific, right? So there's a salesperson there, right? They say, well, okay, what size is your waist and so forth, right? What type of fabric do you want? What is the occasion you want this, right? And so you start narrowing it down, right? So after 2 or 3 hours, you walk out of the store, you have a nice dress that you like, you're $800 poorer,
Mm-hmm.
but you got what you want, right? So that's how this book works, the same way. It's a process of selection because the data is there, it's correct. You are in it.
You just have to find where you're at.
That's right, and find where the other person is at.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say a guy's having trouble with his landlord, right? He could look at these scales. This guy is at this level, okay? And that tells him something, how to deal with him, what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
You might say, oh, I know this guy's not going to cooperate with us. He's at this level. See? So it tells you a lot about how to interact with people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the main thing that most people need to know.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So how do people get your book? Give us your website again, and then tell us where they can get your book.
Okay, well, the website is septemics.com, septemics.com. And the book is very easy to get. If you put the word Septemics in the search engine, you'll get hundreds of responses, including all the people who are selling the book. But of course, you can get it at Amazon, you can get it at Barnes and Nobles, you can get it from the publisher Author House. It's not hard to find. This book is easy to find. Also, I'll tell you that there are hundreds of videos of me all over the internet.
You've done a lot of podcasts and stuff too. You've done a lot. Yeah. You've really done a great job promoting this.
I've done about 225 interviews that are out in the public.
Yeah.
So it's not, hard to find if you want to just, listen to me in another context,
Right.
Because every interview is different, every host is different,
Sure. So you can get some other great information from some of the others.
Yeah, and you might say, well, okay, I heard what you said, but let me listen to this other one. So a lot of people get to me and say, yeah, I saw your interview on so and so and blah blah blah. But the book is really user friendly because it's natural law.
I know you keep saying that, natural law, and that's why I get when you say that's it. Like there's nothing else. It's natural law. You can't do that's just the basic. You can't go more than natural law.
Right.
Right? Am I saying that right?
That's
it's
right.
like that's it. It's like, you can't go any further than that. It's natural law. So it's going to work.
Right. Like the 3 laws of motion. Okay. Newton came out with them 400 years ago. They are still using them to this day.
Mm-hmm.
In physics, astrophysics, rocket science, and so forth.
Right.
Because it's natural law. It always works. Or the Pythagorean theorem. Once you get the Pythagorean theorem, it's in your mind. It's like you can't not know it. It's like it becomes, that's how physicists are with the 3 laws of motion,
Mm-hmm.
Or like the acceleration of gravity at the surface of the earth is 10 meters per second, okay? You don't have to take my word. You can go out with a golf ball and a stopwatch and calculate it yourself. You're going to get the same damn number. This has been calculated thousands and thousands of times. We know the number, okay?
You don't need to prove it again.
That's right. You don't need to prove it. It's there, okay? And that is what engineering is about. You take known data and then you work with it. That is how Einstein got E equals mc squared. He worked with the data. He did what every mathematician in the world does. You get an equation or a formula and you coax data out of it. Mm-hmm. And eventually, at the end, he came down to E equals mc squared. By the way, it's not perfectly true. It's an approximation, but that doesn't really matter to most people. But just as a little aside for people who are into physics, it is an approximation.
My son.
So, but that's where he got it. Okay, that's what mathematics is for. For getting that. So that is what this book is about. If the scale doesn't seem right to you, there are only two possibilities. You don't understand all the words that are in it. And by the way, there's a glossary not only in front of every chapter, but even in front of the introduction.
Oh, good. Okay,
so
yeah.
I'm telling you the meanings of the specific meaning that's used right in that spot. You know, there's a scale of communication. Somebody can say, wait a minute, if you look up communication in a dictionary, it's got like 30 definitions. Which one is he using? I give you the specific one line. So you know exactly what I mean. Okay, so this is human phenomena through the mind of an engineer. Okay, you know, the way we calculate things is always with margin of error. You know, we can calculate how many automobiles are going to be on this bridge, what the total weight of that would be, and therefore how much how much stress the bridge has to hold. And then we increase that by 10 or 20%. And that's the number we use. See? And we do that all the time in engineering. Okay? We calculate it, and then we always put a buffer in it to make it, the standard has to be higher so that we know this bridge is not going to go down. And that is how I made this book. That is why I spent 25 years on it, to do that to it. And I would write a version of it, release it, get feedback. Write another version of it, release it, get feedback. And that went on for 25 years.
Wow.
Until I said, this is clear, concise, and foolproof. Now, if you don't read the glossaries, that's your fault. If you don't study it the way I say to study, I tell you with specificity how to study this subject. Okay? It's a textbook on a new subject. So if you don't follow the instructions, that's like with anything else.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes a guy gets something home and he tries to get it to work. He didn't read the instructions. How? Well, maybe he can get it to work, but if he doesn't get it to work, it's his own fault if he didn't read the instructions. Okay. Right. So that's what I'm telling you about this. This is like a how-to on people.
So basically, everything is in the book.
Yes.
Read it from beginning to end.
I went out of my way to make sure that once you had the book, you didn't need anything else except maybe a dictionary. But I would say that for every book in existence, I would never teach anybody anything without access to a dictionary. You know, some people say, well, I'm a math major. I don't need, oh, really? What's the definition of absolute value? What's the definition of equation? What's the definition of formula? What's the definition of function? And you'll be amazed how many people go, hana, 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 hana.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Listen, you know? They're not, and I said, okay, that's fine. Let's look it up, you know? So it's all in there. And I'm not saying there aren't other good things. There are many other good things. There are good therapists. There are religions. There are all kinds of things you can study. Spengler and Aristotle. You know, there's all kinds of brilliant minds out there. And I encourage everybody to read all of them. But as far as this book, you don't need anything else. You don't need to take a course. You don't need to spend money. You don't need to hire a facilitator. You don't need to join a religion. et cetera, et cetera, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
as is the case in many other things. There's something there, but you have to do this, and this. It's all. So once you get the book, if you study it seriously as a student, you will get it. And to tell you the truth, it's not hard to get because it's natural law. Because,
Wow.
because like once you look at the Fibonacci sequence and you know the formula, oh yeah, this number, and then we get to this number, this number, this number. It's like very simple and clear. And then you see all these creatures that are constructed this way. Okay, it's like it's not debatable.
Wow.
So Neil deGrasse Tyson says something interesting. He says, in any argument that lasts more than 5 minutes, both people are wrong.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Any argument that lasts more than 5 minutes, both are wrong.
Yes.
I like that. It's
Yeah.
true. Because then you're becoming a right fighter.
Yeah. It's like I've spoken to people who tell me the world is 6,000 years old. I say, well, okay. Yeah, I realize if you calculate it in the Bible, that's what it comes out to. But have you ever heard of carbon dating? Well, what's that? Okay. Carbon dating is not hard to learn. It's not even hard to do. We have rocks and we know scientifically how old they are. This rock dates for 250,000 years ago. Okay. Everybody in the science world knows how to do this. So if this guy wants to think the world is 6,000 years old, he's just putting a bag over his head and saying, I don't want to hear it. And it's like he's putting his fingers in his ear and saying, la, 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 la. Don't tell me about it. So that's a lot of what's wrong with the world, that people have their beliefs and their opinions and they're sticking with them.
Yeah.
They don't confuse me with facts, like people say, like you tell somebody, Abraham Lincoln was Republican. No, he wasn't, he was Democrat. No, look it up. All the books, there's hundreds of books, hundreds. Look it up. He was a Republican. Okay. Now, if they bothered to do that, yeah, I didn't know that. I thought he was a Democrat. So that's what education is supposed to be about.
Yeah. Yes.
And
Enlighten you.
does. It educates you about yourself and others.
Mm-hmm.
It tells you, why does your mother treat your father this way? It's in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Why does this girlfriend give you trouble on this subject, but not all these other subjects?
Yeah.
It's there. You just have to ferret it out.
I love this. Well, Jim, this has been great. Thank you for taking the time to explain this. And I think, I'm definitely going to buy a book. You've really piqued my interest. And I didn't buy it before just because I've got such a line of books that I'm reading. I'm literally reading like 2 and listening to a third one. And
Right.
so, but I'm going to get it because I'm actually going to show it to my son because he has a very analytical engineer kind of mind. And I bet he would totally get this. So thank you so much for being on here and explaining this. And one more time, tell everybody what your the book name is and your website.
The book is called Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. And the website is septemics.com.
And I encourage you to go to that website and check it out. I mean, it's really fascinating. And so thank you again so much. This has been great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. It was a pleasure.